This month's Where Did the Road Go is brought to you by 6 amazing people. Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Bart Ooms, Billuminati, 36 Dingo, and Michael Fritzky. If you want to become a patron, www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And now our show.
Transmission start. Welcome to Where Did the Road Go? Join us as we wander off the path and explore lost history, consciousness, the paranormal, unexplained mysteries, alternative thought, and much more. We are present on the web at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Now here is your host, Seriah.
Welcome to this edition of Where Did the Road Go? Tonight I have Mr. Red Pill Junkie.
Buenas noches.
And Christopher Ernst.
Hello, everybody.
And Red Pill, you wanted to do this this show because there is a paper out talking about the latest Vallee book, the Trinity book, that kind of debunks a lot of it.
Yes, this is a very lengthy expose that was published by a guy by the name of Douglas Dean Johnson, and people who may not know him, he is very much involved in, I guess because of his background, he has a legal background. I believe he's a lawyer. And so he is the kind of people who really don't understand a thing about laws, like me, go to when something with regards to, all the recent legislation that mentions UFOs, or rather UAP, and is mentioned in the latest defense bills. When that is brought upon, the guy brings a lot of comment, and he's very much on the nose, tracking that sort of stuff. So that is his background, and he's also done other stuff, writing critiques or exposés about Bob Lazar, also about Rex Stanford, whom I believe he actually knew personally when he was young, and this is not the time to talk about that.
I don't even know who Ray is.
Ray Stanford, oh my God, Ray Stanford is, is one of the classics in the UFO field. Is like harkening back to the time of the UFO contactees.
Oh, okay.
Like Ray and his twin brother Rex. They were teenagers where they were hanging around with the likes of George Adamski, and all that crowd, and they actually, for a while, Ray and Rex kind of like became contactees themselves. I guess it will be fair to say that Ray was the one, claiming to have some kind of like psychic connection to UFO entities, and Rex was just supporting him. They wrote a book called Look Up. Among other things, they describe some kind of like UFO sighting they had. I think it was near Giant Rock. I believe it was in the 1950s. And anyway, after a while, Ray Stanford kind of like left the psychic part of UFO and tried to become a serious UFO researcher, trying to apply the scientific method to study UFOs, even though he wasn't really a scientist. He never actually got a degree. His brother Rex actually got a degree in parapsychology, and as I understand it, he was very well regarded in those circles.
Yeah, he was. He worked at he was at the parapsychology department at University of Virginia for a while, and I think he was like vice president and president of the Parapsychological Association for a while. Yeah, this is all like in the 70s.
Okay,
right, and Ray allegedly has in his possession a lot of really interesting UFO evidence that he's gathered over the years, like films and recordings, using not only like regular field camera, but other types of instruments. And according to him, several scientists have visited him in his home in Washington, D.C. What he also has a large collection of dinosaur tracks, another thing by which Ray has become something of a celebrity is that he's considered one of the foremost discoverer of dinosaur tracks in the United States, if not the whole world.
Oh.
And this is something that speaks about his, I don't know if you could say that this proves he has some kind of sixth sense, but at least it shows that he has a really acute perception, when it comes to things that maybe other people will overlook. And I don't know, this is neither here nor there. And anyway, Douglas Dean Johnson doesn't seem to be too fond of Rex Stanford.
Gotcha.
Like I said, I don't want to get into that right now because it will take another episode, which will be interesting, actually, because Rex Stanford is a fascinating character. But anyway, Johnson wrote on May 1st this extremely lengthy expose going into the particulars of Jacques Vallee's and Paola Harris's latest book, Trinity, The Best Kept Secret, which was published I have my copy here, in 2021.
Yeah.
Actually, there are two editions of this book. The first one came in 2021, and I think the latest one, I don't know if it came out earlier this year or at the end of 2022. It was a kind of like a revised edition in which they included the testimony of another alleged new witness to the case of this, and I guess we need to talk into the particulars of this case. Apparently, two children at the time, Jose Padilla and Reme Baca, were children who were living at the Socorro, New Mexico area in the late 1940s, back when Project Manhattan was developing the atomic bomb. Actually, their families were there when the first atomic bomb test took place. And this is something that is actually interesting and it's part of the book, how the American authorities did not prevent or even warn local residents about what was going to take place, not even after the bombed experiments took place and all this stuff about contamination in the area, all the radiation that was going into the water supply and affecting the local population for years to come. This is something that the book briefly touches upon and probably is, in my opinion, one of the most interesting parts of the book. That I guess no one contends to, that the fact that the American authorities behaved rather unethically in order to try to maintain the secret of the developing of the atomic bomb.
I'm shocked.
Anyway,
I'm completely in shock.
Yes, exactly. But anyway, so supposedly these two children, when they were taking care of ranch affairs because the grown-ups were fighting the war still. So the children were left in charge of duties like going after, the cows to see if when a cow was about to give birth to a calf. According to their story, they were going to go and check her out and put the brand on the new calf, so so no one would steal it. So they heard some kind of like rumbling, big, like explosion, and that's when they saw this craft crashing into the area not far from where they were. They described the object as having the shape of an avocado, which is kind of interesting. I mean, I guess that is a shape that is neither an egg shape nor a totally, elliptical.
Right.
Or cylindrical. Right. So that, and I guess for a Hispanic population, to say that it's an avocado or an aguacate, as we would say here in Mexico, is a very natural thing to say. And the children also describe like the creosote bush surrounding the area to burst into flames because of the extreme heat produced by the crash. And they also managed to notice throughout some kind of like crack or opening in the craft, being some type of entities, bipedal entities, I guess, that were going back and forth in some type of state of frantic, probably, some type of terror or concern after the crash. And according to the story, the children had some kind of like mental or telepathic link with these entities. They have some kind of visions or something like to that effect. After a while, it was getting dark, so they had to go back to their home. And they return, according to the book, 2 days later with one of their children's parents, and also a friend of the family, a patrolman by the name of Eddie Apodaca. So the two grown-ups entered into the craft, and after a few minutes, they went out, and they had very concerned or very disturbed look in their faces, I guess, because at first maybe the story suggests that they believe this was some kind of like test vehicle from the army, and then maybe they realized that it was something else, and then they told the children, well, look, you cannot talk to anyone about what happened here. And the story goes that after a while, shortly after, the army did show up, and they started to like gather the material and started to prepare the craft to be taken out of this property. They even asked Faustino Padilla, who was the father of Jose Padilla, permission to like go into his fence, open it, widen it, in order for a flat truck to be passed there, so they could take the scrap, which was definitely, according to the story, not your typical meteorological balloon, like the thing that people in living in New Mexico in that area were accustomed to. It seemed to be rather wide and rather heavy. And according to the story, the children took an opportunity when the soldiers were guarding the craft, went to the local bar to have dinner and hook up with the local girls. And one of the kids, Jose Padilla, who was the oldest, went into the craft, and the story goes that they wanted to take some kind of like souvenir. That's the word they used. And he found something that is called the bracket, some kind of like a metal thing that was probably or allegedly hinged or strapped into the interior of the craft. And the kid, using some kind of like crowbar or cheater bar or something, somehow, and this is where the story, to my knowledge, it really goes way beyond believability, but we'll get there, managed to release this thing open, or release this object from the interior of the craft. And that is the piece that they took as evidence, which has been analyzed, and everybody is of agreement. It is just a regular piece of metal that has nothing whatsoever strange or otherworldly, neither in its composition nor in its dimensions. It's even said to be designed in the metric system, which I think is interesting, which suggests, and I think Vallee is of the opinion that maybe it was designed and built in Mexico. So obviously the question is, what is something like that doing in the interior of an alleged alien craft?
Vallee does still, and this is in, not to jump too far ahead, but
yes,
Vallee has put out not a retraction, but I guess a response to this via Paola Harris's Facebook that I just read 30 minutes ago. And in it, he does say that, let's see, what was it? He's talking about how there are some of the scientists here that are talking about, I swear there was some place where they're talking about how it still is made up of, or somebody is still arguing, maybe it isn't Vallee, that it's still made up of materials that would not be put together. And maybe I'm wrong. I'm trying to find where this is because I've just been reading a bunch of information. But somebody is still insisting that there is a scientist that is asserting that there is a bunch of, that it's made up of, some sort of weird alloy. I don't know if that's true or not. I just wanted to interject that.
Okay.
I read that too, not long ago. I mean, I think, as to my knowledge, it was released today, May 16th in the afternoon.
Okay.
That's when it came into my
then
attention.
maybe someplace else.
As far as I can say, maybe the moment when they were talking about the analysis of material samples that seem to be of scientific interest. I don't know if they actually are talking about this particular object, quote-unquote bracket, or if they are talking of metal samples that have actually been gathered from the field in which this purported crash took place. A field that, as to my knowledge, the whereabouts has never been, the location has not been publicly disclosed. I guess it is being kept secret. But the way that they describe it, someone, for some reason, years later, seeded all sorts of venomous, like poisonous weeds or something that it is kind of weird. Like, oh, this is the way that they are going to keep this secret, like putting some kind of like poison ivy or something that so people are not will not be able to dig and to try to find more samples. So I don't know, Chris. I'm responding to you, and I'm still.
I can't find where that is, but I did find that in the response, Vallee does again assert that this is that he never thought it was that this thing was a piece. I'm just trying to figure out where that came from. I'll find it.
And I've listened to Jacques on at least 4 podcast interviews in which he discusses this case and book. And he has never said, oh yeah, this was,
right.
I thought this was, some kind of like ET artifact. He from the get-go, and in the book it is well established that this is the thing that doesn't make any sense to him. Like what would this thing do in the interior of this alleged alien craft? And I guess in these interviews, he speculates, and it's obviously a speculation, that maybe that was put by the same army soldiers that were in charge of retrieving the craft for some reason, maybe tried to stabilize something within the interior of the craft. But again, then the question is, why would the American army use, a bracket that was probably built in a country that uses the metric system? And obviously the closest country that uses the metric system is Mexico. Why would the American army use a Mexican, piece? Maybe it was something that they found in a nearby town. I think that even Reme Baca in the book that he wrote I think it was published in 2011, Born on the Edge of Ground Zero, I think is the title. He speculates, and that's actually an interesting speculation, that maybe alien intelligences that came to this planet then created this craft, just to traverse the atmosphere using the materials that we'll find in our own planet, which is actually, I have to say, it's a more elegant explanation than the one Vallee himself gives in the Trinity book. The aliens, they came here, maybe they crashed here, on their mothership, and they need to get from here to there. and they are building these airships using whatever they can find. Maybe they had a quick trip to Mexico, and they found this little bracket, and then they used that to, I don't know, to build interior, whatever. They were not too picky.
Was this crash supposed to happen before or after the Trinity test?
I believe it happened a month after the Trinity test.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. This happened. Help me out, Chris. I want to say August 6th, 1945, and the Trinity test happened. I guess.
Oh, the actual Trinity test the first Trinity test in New Mexico. Yeah, that was July 16th, 1945. Okay, 5:30 a.m.
Okay.
Well, that must have been a nice wake-up call for people.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah, the book goes into how, some people, obviously, because they didn't know, they looked directly into the blast, and I guess it was either Jose or Reme's mother who got blind from one eye, just from looking to the blast from the keyhole in the door, which is and that's interesting. That's definitely the part of the book that caught my attention more definitely than Paul Harris's boring interviews with Reme and Jose that were transcribed almost verbatim in the book.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are the basic claims being made, and I mean, we had a lot.
Claims, yes.
We had a lot of doubts when this came out. We were kind of surprised that Vallee would be even working with Paola.
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like this guy has done enough digging on it to raise further doubts that any of this stuff is legitimate.
Yeah. And obviously for the people who want to check this for themselves, we will put some link into it. It is divided in at least 13 different chapters who go into different aspects of the story, trying to deconstruct it and debunk it, if you will, if you agree with him one by one. And for the record, to be completely honest, I haven't even finished reading all of it, and I've read enough. For me to be at least admitting that Douglas makes a case at least in some of the most important aspects of the case. For example, to me, the first thing is where he goes into the identity of Eddie Apodaca, who was, according to the Trinity story, the friend of the family who accompanies Faustino, Jose's father, and the kids to the crash site, and went into the craft with Faustino. And Douglas shows, images, JPEGs of what seems to be official records. And these records seem to show very clearly that there was no patrolman with the name of Eddie Apodaca in the year of 1945 that could fit into the story as it was told originally in the Trinity book. And furthermore, Douglas shows that there was a guy, a patrolman, Eddie Apodaca in New Mexico, but that guy graduated and became a patrolman in 1951. So, years after the event took place. And furthermore, this guy, the Eddie Apodaca that we know for a fact that he existed, was still in the army. Yeah. Is still stationed in Europe before he was discharged. After the end of World War II in 1945. So, and this is something that I guess the tone of the expose at times, it is a bit snarky. Douglas says, Eddie was probably closer to Jacques, who was a young boy living in France, than to the guys in the Socorro, Mexico region. And the guy shows newspaper clippings of who this guy, Eddie Apodaca, was. Apparently, one of the things he did during his career was he stopped some kind of a person that was assaulting or was threatening people in the highway with some kind of like weapon, some kind of like a knife or something, and this patrolman actually managed to stop him and capture him. So that was big news back in the day in New Mexico in the 1950s. And Douglas allegedly managed to try to get the service of someone who wrote a book about the history of the New Mexico Hawaii police in that era, and the guy couldn't find some Apodaca that could actually fit into the Trinity story. So to me personally, that really puts a big dent into the Trinity story. And someone will say, well, obviously this happened so long ago, and these witnesses were children. Actually, this is something that is used over and over again by both Paola and Jacques, and say, oh, well, these children, they couldn't lie. They were so young. They were
kids
innocent.
Can't lie.
Yeah, and this is something that Douglas says in his expose, and I reluctantly have to agree with him. When these people told the story, they weren't children anymore. They were grown men. They were full-ass grown men. And another thing that it is told in the Trinity book is that one of the witnesses, Jose Padilla, really amazing memory capabilities, either photographic memory, eidetic memory, however you want to call it.
Yeah.
But even someone reading the book will notice in the parts in which Paola is interviewing him that he has a lot of trouble, like recollecting the little details. And like I said, I'm not an expert in photographic memory. I don't have photographic memory. I'm not an expert in neurology or psychiatry, but that is troubling. The idea that someone, you say, well, he has really great powers of recollection, but at the same time, and this is something that Johnson actually goes into his expose in different interviews that happened prior to the publication of Trinity, the Best Kept Secret. Padilla gave conflicting testimony that differed from the original story that they gave, and that was originally published, I guess, by one of their friends, one of their school friends. I guess his name was George Moffett, I guess his name, in 2003.
Yeah, right.
And that is the reason why we're talking about this story, because it was published in a really small local newspaper that was, I guess, eventually picked up. And also, I guess, because Reme Baca had some involvement in the UFO community. I guess he was an active member of MUFON, maybe in the Washington State area.
So the thing about eidetic memory, and I don't know if they talk about it in the Invisible Gorilla book yet. I'm hoping they do, because they talk about how unreliable memory really is. And I want to know the difference, between that type of study and the study of someone with eidetic memory. And I don't know if they do that in there. I haven't finished the book, and so far they haven't touched on it. It feels like they're going for a more general idea. So I'd really like to ask them about eidetic memory and see if eidetic memory is truly a thing, if it's any more accurate than normal memories, like a normal person's memories. But
right. I don't know. I don't pretend someone with photographic memory to be like a computer, like have a flawless recollection of every nitty-gritty detail.
Because I would think the memories still are formed the same way. They just might have better recall of them.
Perhaps, yes. But also,
I think it's different. They have different sort of mental models too. There are people that have these specific ways of modeling and thinking of information.
True.
That, people, consider, they call it, photographic memory or eidetic memory, but It's not really. It's more sort of this like memory palace type thing they're doing.
Although obviously they're doing it without any effort.
Correct. Right.
Yeah.
It's easier.
That is my understanding of it. Like I said,
It's like the people who could do math. You give them this huge math problem, and a second later that they have the answer, and you're like, how? How does your brain even do that?
I don't know. I mean, my own mental ability that kind of like leaves people baffled is like I can listen to a movie that I know for 20 seconds. I can listen to the sound of it, like the dialogue, without even actually looking at the movie, and I can recognize the movie and say, oh, you're watching, I don't know, The Fifth Element, or you're watching Saving Private Ryan.
Gotcha.
Because I can detect and say, oh, is that movie, and it's like, oh my God, I have this repertoire of dialogues that I have in mind. I don't know, it's just something that I recognize the way that someone recognizes. Oh, that's the color blue. Well, because it's the color blue.
Okay. Yeah. I can kind of do that with music, but
sure,
it's like I'll hear two notes and be like, I know what that is.
Exactly, that. What is that song? And people hear
right.
three chords in the Beatles song, and they know exactly what song it is. And it's, I don't know if it's an special ability or it's just a matter of someone listening to that song for 200 times,
right,
and becoming ingrained in their memory forever, indelible. So I don't know. I guess this is something that I will leave open. The idea of how reliable is the memory of someone who claims to have photographic memory,
and also, I mean, let's assume they're telling the truth. They were children when this happened, which memories from when you're a child are often not that good. Quite frankly, I mean, I know some people who have a lot of early memories, but most people, by the time they're like 40 or so, the very early life memories just aren't there,
Yeah. Obviously, you go to a place you knew when you were a child, and what is the first thing that people say? Oh my God, it looks so small. Well, obviously, because you were tiny when you were having this experience, and obviously the world felt different. All these first impression and all these experiences had such a big impact. That now that you are, retracing your steps, you are literally retracing your steps with bigger shoes.
Yeah. And it also feels, when I was reading the critique of this, I mean, it feels like it draws some parallels to the Aztec UFO crash, where you basically had these two guys, making up a story, what it seems like.
Like, one of the arguments Johnson makes is that Reme Baca, I mean, and this is where I kind of like take issue with the way that the expose is written, that is very matter-of-factly saying, these are hoaxes, instead of leaving the question open, instead of saying, well, I found these inconsistencies, and I'll leave it to the readers to decide. You guys said, no, this is a hoax, and these guys were doing it in order to get money. Yeah. And Reme Baca managed to concoct the story by reading all these books, the Roswell book, the Aztec book, and all this stuff that he got acquainted in the 1990s when he became a member of MUFON.
Well, also, he's a lawyer. So
he's a lawyer, yes.
So his thing is to make an argument for one side.
Yeah, and a thing that I have to say that it is a big gap in his own expose is that he never even goes and addresses the matter of what is called the third witness in the Trinity book.
Yep.
And that is the person of Sabrina Padilla, who was supposedly I want to say supposedly. I'm using supposedly a lot, guys, because that is kind of like a custom when you're not 100% sure of what you're saying. You know, just people who are listening to this. So Sabrina Padilla is Jose Padilla's niece, and in the book he is referred as the third witness because when she was young, she went to live at Faustino's house in New Mexico, and in the story they say that she became acquainted and she actually interacted and handled some of the material that was retrieved from the crash.
Right. This is the angel hair.
The angel hair that in the book, both Vallee speculates that it was some kind of maybe fiber optic that apparently if you handle it too long, it started to sting, and sting you, and it was kind of like nasty to the touch. So Vallee doesn't know if that is because it was radioactive or something. But according to the story, and I have to admit, this is kind of unbelievable to me, the people in the town, in the small town, use this material as decoration for their, Christmas tree, which is like, okay, this is almost like some kind of like, outer limits of Twilight Zone kind of like story. They had this crash site and they're using it as the Christmas tree, and they're using this material to fix the windmill and all the stuff, because that's what will you do. And what happened to all that stuff? Did they all just dumped it, after they managed to get proper Christmas lights for the tree? Anyway, in the Douglas Dean Johnson exposés, he never goes into talk about Sabrina, and to me that is a mistake, because if you're going to go after this book, you need to go after the whole book.
Well, maybe he couldn't find anything one way or the other, in which case he wouldn't bring it up.
And you could say and that this book, if you are going to go after every single element of the book, it will take you months. But at the same time, the answer is well, nobody asked you to do this thing in the first place. But if you're going to do it, you have to do it the whole thing. So,
well, he also he did say that the page was the website was a work in progress, and he was constantly going to be adding.
It is a work in progress. Yes, it is a work in progress, and I don't know. I want to put I want to express my position. My position is that I read the expose, and I think he makes a good case, and in some points, not in all of them. And I also read, this rebuttal that Harris has published, for example, the idea that Jose Padillas lied about his military records. Apparently, he said in the Trinity book that he actually went to Korea, which is kind of difficult because, as Johnson says, when he was 16 years old, when the Korean War officially ended, and Paola Harris's rebuttal says that, well, yes, one thing is that the war to officially end, and the other thing is for military operations to actually cease overseas. And I have to admit that is a good point, because 20 years from now, people will read that the Iraqi war ended, like 2008 or whatever. But that doesn't mean that American soldiers weren't in the Middle East far longer than that.
Well, also, wasn't he unable to find any record that he was in the military?
I'm not sure about that. That part I didn't read.
Okay.
In his expose, in Johnson's expose.
Okay, I'm going from memory, so I don't know.
Okay.
But the officer there, that is a big deal.
Yeah, idea Apodaca for me is the most convincing aspect of Douglas Dean Johnson's position, and the rebuttal that is, in my opinion, very weak. I'm paraphrasing, but they're basically saying, well, maybe there was another guy by the name of Apodaca, Eddie, and Eddie it's a very common name. Maybe there was another guy by that name, and it's like, well, first of all, that's like very tenuous, and second of all, Johnson made sure that there wasn't another patrolman by the name of Eddie Apodaca prior to 1951.
Yeah.
And not only that, we go back to the idea of, so how good is Jose Padilla's memory then? You know?
Yeah.
Yep.
Because the guy did exist. He just existed later.
The guy did exist.
Which means he could just be mistaken. But then, of course, as you say, it brings up his memory. I mean, maybe something did crash, but maybe it was like a test vehicle or something for the military. It's in the right area.
Sure.
And then his memory just conflated into all this other stuff.
I mean, I could entertain, I'm making this a scenario right now, in this moment, saying that, well, maybe Eddie Apodaca was actually a friend of the family and he was still in the army, but he was, having some kind of vacation or something before being officially discharged. And that's when this whole thing happened. And then maybe after he returned to New Mexico, after being officially discharged from the army, that's when he became a patrolman. And that's when all this thing became kind of like bungled up in the memory of the witnesses. Maybe, but there is no way to actually connect him to the Trinity story. It's trying to fit these round peg into a square hole, in all these positions, to be honest, in the Trinity stuff.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I find to be the strangest about is I'm trying to wrap my head around why he's focusing on it this much. It was something Barbara Fisher said something interesting in the Slack, where she was saying that the one thing that she took out of reading the book, at least, not reading all of this controversy over it, but was that she felt like the real crux of it was trying to create some linkage or re-look at the linkage between nuclear weapons and UFO phenomena.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the interesting thing about the Trinity book, as far as we can ascertain, is that it did have some kind of impact.
Yeah.
After it was released, and even Vallee and Paola admit that the first edition they hurried into the release of the first edition because they said that they wanted to have some impact into the people in Congress making legislation about UFOs. And we now know that actually in all these new bills of defense, there is some aspects that talk about trying to accommodate what you will call as whistleblowers, people who might know about programs that are related in some capacity to UFOs.
Yeah, right.
And I guess the first draft of this bill had the year of 1947 as the year in which the bill will look into these supposed projects. But because of the Trinity book, the year got bumped to 1945.
Oh,
So that has some impact. I don't know if it was because I don't know if it was because Chris Ernst. Sorry, Chris Ernst. Sorry, man. Chris Mellon.
What did I do?
You were the one
it
who
was me. Yeah, Chris Mellon.
You were to Washington. Sorry, it was Chris. Maybe it was Chris Mellon.
Yeah.
Brought a copy of that to, Marco Rubio and Gillibrand and all these people who are Gallego and all these people who are championing the UFO story right now in the United States government, or another insider. But apparently that was the impact that the Trinity book had in current government affairs in the United States.
Very interesting. Huh. Because that is something that Vallee ends with in his rebuttal. That's how he, basically, finishes up, is he talks about the importance of, at a time when Congress is looking for historical data about direct observation of UFO phenomena, is there a deeper motive in suppressing what could be an important contribution to its knowledge?
Yeah. And I have to say, look, I don't know Douglas Dean Johnson personally. I have interacted with him online. privately on a number of occasions. My impression of the person is that I don't think he is working for someone with some kind of like hidden agenda. I think that he's, doing this stuff for the same reasons that we right now are doing this stuff. Like he is because of, his personal drive. He's passionate about that, where he goes against Ray Stanford, because I honestly think, and he's made it very clear in his writings, that he has an actual axe to grind with Ray, rightly or wrongly. And there is a lot of controversy and a lot of stuff with Ray's past that, people will give him pause. Like there was a time when Ray Stanford was asking people money to build a time machine.
Well, you can pay them back from the future.
Well, yeah, with crypto. Imagine trying to pay him with crypto in 1967 or something. Okay. So, and the same goes with when he goes and criticizes Bob Lazar's story, which is actually is stuff that I happen to agree with him. Yeah. So maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm guilty of the same kind of like bias as everyone else. Like, when he goes against the people I don't like, I happen to, be totally in agreement. When he goes against people I like, I disagree with him. Like, I'm trying to be objective and say, like I said, I feel he's raising good points in his critique of the Trinity book. Maybe he could have done it in a different manner. Maybe he could have done it in a more objective tone, more cordial, more accommodating. I don't know. I mean, he says in that he tried to actually have a conversation with Jacques, a personal conversation that will be recorded, because he wanted to address some of these things, some of the things that he found. But
right, because he said he said he wanted to talk to him just for like an hour or something like that, or half an hour.
Half an hour, I think, something like that, and never managed to do that. So I don't know what to tell you. I mean, Jacques Vallee doesn't owe us anyone anything, I mean, I'm sure he's an extremely busy man. He's got things to do that we barely know of. And so if someone, he doesn't know, can I like talk to you with half an hour, probably the natural reaction will be, get lost.
Well, I mean, okay, let's be fair. We all love Jacques Vallee. Vallee has probably done more for the UFO field than anyone, as far as widening the way we look at it and everything else. But
he's the freaking magician.
Yeah. And how does he let a book like this come out with these gaping holes in it? Like the officer. That should have been something they just checked. I mean, why was that not checked? And if he did check it and had evidence that this person existed, then he would have presented it in his rebuttal, which, they don't. Like, it seems almost out of character for him.
Yeah, and this is where maybe I'm going to be guilty of trying to defend Vallee by going after his partner and say, well, this is all Paola Harris's fault. The same way that Kevin Randle's got into this similar situation when it was shown that Don Schmitt was also very sloppy in his research of the Roswell affair. When Don Schmitt was trying to find records about missing nurses. I don't know if you guys remember something about that.
Yeah, vaguely.
And there was this reporter writing for Omni magazine that found the records like in a week, something like Don Schmitt said, no, I've been trying to find these for years and years, and it cannot be found, and then it was shown, well, this guy is just a sloppy researcher. Not only that, but he also actually never confided in his colleague Kevin Randle that that instead of being, I guess he said he was some kind of like medical illustrator or something that he did for a living. No, he was actually working for the post office, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But
but why lie about it?
Why lie about it? Why say you are something you're not? Same thing with the people we all love, Rosemary Ellen Guiley, when she became embroiled with Philip Imbrogno, And Philip Imbrogno, it was discovered that he had lied about his academic credentials. He said he had been going to, I think he said he went to MIT. I think he also said he went to, either the Army or the Marines. I'm not sure, that he was being shown to be guilty of what is in the United States called stolen valor, something like that. So he was totally discredited, and he was, disgraced and kicked out of the UFO field. He probably returned, because everybody returns to the UFO field sooner or later, because the field has no memory. Let's be honest about it. But
that's our culture in general.
Problem. Yeah, and the thing is, are you going to then discredit or dismiss everything that Rosemary Ellen Guiley wrote because of her involvement with Imbrogno? No. The same will say, are you going to dismiss everything that Jacques Vallee has written or said or worked about because of this book that maybe was not as thoroughly researched or checked,
of course,
as all these previous books? No, but that's the thing that we all love. Some people want to do in the UFO field. They want to go and attack, and they want to try to discredit people, and because that's the nature of the field. It's very like, I don't know, it's like a bucket of crabs trying to, in the moment some of the crabs trying to get out of the bucket, the other one is like, where are you going? And with the pincers, it's like dragging it back into the bottom of the bucket.
Yeah. And let's not forget that Vallee didn't only do a lot for the UFO field, but also for computers.
Oh my God, yes. I mean, he kind of was instrumental in the development of ARPANET, which was the backbone or the scaffolding for the modern internet.
Yeah. And he was the first one to develop a search engine that would search for words and such, and not just numbers.
Mm-hmm. So, the whole thing about hashtags.
Yeah, he's, the man is brilliant. There's no two ways about it, and he has contributed a huge amount to our socity, which is
the GOAT.
Exactly why, when this, came out, we saw who he was working with. It's like, this doesn't seem like a Vallee project.
Right. The moment that you see a book written by Jacques Vallee that is praising Jaime Maussan is when you say, no, what is this? What happened here?
I mean, for anybody that's not familiar with Paola Harris and sort of what I think the bones that we all collectively might have to pick with her. And again, there's some people that, I don't know, I remember talking to Steve Berg, and he was saying how he interviewed her and she was perfectly nice. And she might be perfectly nice and very kind of cool going along with, maybe some interesting ideas. But there's a certain contingent that she's gotten herself involved in, which is really the exopolitics, secret space program, Gaia TV, all that kind of stuff that I think, for a lot of us just seems really obviously a grift. And maybe she's one of those people that is honestly grifted by it and, but a true believer and you're just going along. I'm not sure, but it was really suspect in the way it was, two people that never would have sort of come together, organically.
Yeah.
I mean, I would invite anyone who remains neutral in this discussion to pick up a copy of Trinity, the Best Kept Secret, and read through all the transcripts of Paola's interviews with the two witnesses, Reme Baca and Jose Padilla. Also, you can find other sources of these interviews online, and try not to think that she is leading the witnesses when she's talking to them. Is this something that was really disturbing me when I tried to read this book? And actually, this is not a long book. I'm reading, 330 something pages with an index and such. This is a book that you will read in a month if you're lazy like me. And I think I read it in 3 months because it was really hard for me to go through these parts in which I was like, what is going on here? I mean, she's trying to be buddy with these people, and she's putting ideas into their heads because she obviously knows a lot about with her involvement with Philip Corso. So there were time when I was saying, you are leading the witness, you are putting words in their mouths when you're talking to them. You know, I'm sorry. Yeah, she's probably the nicest person you could ever have a conversation with, but I have to take issue with her, at least with her interrogation techniques. My own personal biased, subjective position.
Okay, that's fine. Let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Quick break here to give you contact information for the show, and also to give you a recommendation. Okay, so contact info, pretty simple. Stories at wheredidtheroadgo.com. If you have a listener story type of thing you want to share with us, even if you don't want it read on the air and you just want to get my feedback on it, which some people have done, stories at wheredidtheroadgo.com. Everything else, contact at wheredidtheroadgo.com. And all our social media and everything else can be found at wheredidtheroadgo.com. You can become a patron for only $3 a month. You get extra content all month long. And if you want to snail mail me something, send me a package, a book, or something like that, it's P.O. Box 444, Ovid, New York, 14521. All right. Now for a recommendation. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go way back to one that was very popular at one point, but I realize some people may have completely missed it. And it's a podcast called The Black Tapes. And it's put out by this company who has done a bunch of different stuff, including Tanis and things like that, which I would also recommend, but I'll get to those later. The Black Tapes started in 2015, and they ended it in, it looks like, the beginning of 2020. It definitely fits the mood of this show for the most part. It's about a skeptic who has these black tapes that are the few things he can't explain. And this girl who's doing, I can't remember if it's a story on him or something like that, finally gets him to admit that he doesn't know what these black tapes are or what's happening on them. And it slowly leads them down a path into investigating them. And it's extremely well done. It's very creepy. The only downside is the ending kind of sucks. It just sort of ends very suddenly and abruptly, and no one's really sure why. It seems like they were going to do more, and then they didn't. I think they got picked up for a TV show, and then that fell through. But it came out in Pacific Northwest Stories, and it's definitely worth your time to listen to. It's a really good paranormal podcast, fiction, obviously. Audio drama, but very, very well done. So, and I realized that if you're only getting into podcasts recently, I mean, that podcast was huge 5 or 6 years ago, but you rarely hear about it anymore. But it's out there, The Black Tapes. So that's my recommendation for you this week. All right, back to the show. So I'm here with Christopher Ernst and Red Pill Junkie, and we're talking about Jacques Vallee's Trinity book and the sort of expose on the problems with it. That was published by who? What's his name again?
Douglas Dean Johnson.
So, and this is, we're recording this on, what is today? May 16th. And
Yes.
He started publishing this May 1st. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think
May 1st, 2023. And it's just, he takes apart a lot of parts of the book that are questionable as to whether or not Vallee really looked into this stuff like he should have.
Yeah.
There's also the pilot. Now, who is the pilot that supposedly saw the crash from the sky, but he's saying there's no evidence that happened?
Brophy, I think this is.
That's right.
Brophy.
And what's the story there?
I didn't go into that particular chapter, but I think the story is that all these came to light because of the son of this pilot.
Yeah.
This real, pilot that seems to have been trying to sell the idea that his dad was involved with some kind of like UFO recovery operation for some time now, and trying to make that story fit into different narratives. And now he attempted to do that with the Trinity story, and for whatever reason, Harrison and Vallee believed him.
Yeah.
I'm looking at there's letters. The first Brophy letter. Go ahead.
Oh, no, he was just, he seemed like somebody that was similar to the sort of whole like Corso thing, in that he was, this army brat that was coming forward to say that he had all of these secrets, possibly that might be true. But I think one of the big weird things that is talked about, that Johnson talks about in this, is that in the first edition, the name like Brophy never appears. And again, some of this could be sloppiness, they have somebody named Brophy, Brothy, that's talking about it. And then there's this weird thing that I guess in the in the comments in Amazon for the first version of Trinity, the breast kept secret, like this guy comes in and starts saying, like in the comments, this is Bill Brophy. He says, my dad's B-29 bomber group, the 231st Alamogordo Air Force base in New Mexico, recovered the spacecraft August 15th to 17th, 1945. In 2007, I was interviewed by Wendelle Stevens about this crash, and Wendelle surprised me by telling me he had been at 2 UFO recoveries at Kingman, Arizona, May 18th and May 22nd, 1953. So, like, I don't know if this guy had been, like, contacted them through Amazon and then through the reviews and then was in there, was interviewed or something like that. But I don't know. Paris did apparently interview him in 2010. But the whole thing that Johnson is essentially saying is that this Brophy guy is kind of seems to be looking for, like, the way in which he depicts himself and the stories he tells do not sound like an actual, like, witness. It sounds like somebody who's, kind of trying to
reliable.
Yeah.
I think that what I managed to read in Johnson's expose is that he managed to actually interview not this guy, but his brother, the other son of the actual pilot. And the brother said that their father told them some kind of like UFO encounter he had when he was a pilot. But that had nothing to do with, an actual, involvement with some type of crash recovery operation. So Johnson's argument, and I'm going to be, neutral because, like I said, I never read this in my first edition of the Trinity book, but his assessment is that this guy wanted to, like, make his dad's involvement with the military UFOs bigger than it actually was.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And he's saying that essentially he said that his dad was flying above and, like, saw this scene. That was never mentioned in the first book.
Yeah.
But then in the second book, Padilla now is corroborating that.
Right.
Like, and it kind of doesn't make sense from a logical point of view because, for what I understand, I could be wrong, Brophy says that his father saw, from above, the crash site, and he actually even managed to see the children, which he mistook, as Native Americans, as Indians. But actually they weren't, they were Hispanic kids. Yet in the book and in the other interviews, the children Padilla and Reme never said anything about hearing a plane, flying by over when they were witnessing this craft. And this is something that you will say, and suddenly we listen and there was a plane nearby. You're in the desert, in the like in the desert, you will hear a plane.
Yeah, this guy seems to have made up some history for his father, who had passed away by the time this stuff started coming out. And there's no evidence that it fits anything his father actually did. And then they seem to, Remy and his brother seem to have glommed onto this and been like, yeah, that happened.
Well, Padilla, because, by now, Reme Baca, he died in 2013.
Oh, okay.
And even Vallee is very clear in stating that he never personally met with Reme Baca. He never interviewed him. He is relying solely on Paola Harris's interviews with Baca over the years.
Which also seems strange.
Yeah.
In Vallee's response, he mentioned something. Let me go here to see if I can remember. But he mentions that the reason why he started looking into this was because he was turned onto it by somebody that he
his friend
implicitly trusts. Yeah.
It was a friend of his,
Ron Brinkley. It was Ron. Yeah,
who died actually under very unfortunate circumstances. I think he was run over by a drunk driver when he was riding his bike.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm looking right now at the foreword, page 15 of the foreword. My friend, researcher Ron Brinkley, the last time I saw him, October 2017, they were sitting at the Owl and Bar and Cafe in San Antonio, New Mexico. This was the bar that supposedly, was where all these soldiers who were looking into the craft were hanging out while, little Jose Padilla was inside the craft trying to get a piece of, a piece of metal, keep him, as a souvenir, which also doesn't really make sense, because if they still thought at the time that it was something that belonged to the military in some capacity, or maybe, this happened allegedly little under a month after the first nuclear explosion.
Yeah.
What do you think that if you're trying to, take something, from this object, and maybe it will explode?
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
Kid, maybe you should leave that thing, there. God knows what will happen if you're going to go boom and you're going to go blow the whole town.
Yeah. If the most recent thing you saw was Trinity, you think so?
Yeah.
And the fact that this, they didn't actually talk about this till what year was it?
I think
2003. I think
2003 is when the original article was published.
So my question is, why wait so long? I can understand back then in 1945 not talking about it, but why not when UFOs started blowing up? Don't you come out and say, hey, when we were kids?
You know what?
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with that aspect of the narrative, actually.
Really?
I mean, I don't know. I guess maybe I'm stupid, but maybe my rationale is something like that will leave some kind of like trauma into your life, and especially at such a tender age, that maybe it will be similar to admitting that you were molested when you were a child. That is not something that you bring up easily.
Yeah, I mean, even look at something like that really excellent documentary, Witness to Another World.
Exactly.
There was quite a bit of shame, and the individual in there who, for people who haven't seen it, and you should, it's a really excellent film that does involve Jacques Vallee, and I think a very positive light. And there was quite a bit of essentially this young man hid his experience through most of his life and had a very stunted sort of existence and growth because of that. So I mean, it can happen. I think
it yes. I think it. I mean, that you go into psychology aspects, you can go either way. Say, well, of course you will. Have diarrhea of the mouth and brag about that, or you will bury it into your subconscious. And I also remember, Seriah, there are times in which people have dramatic UFO encounters, and then something happens that stirs their memory, and they're, oh my God, remember that time that we also have that close encounters, and they totally forget that.
Mm-hmm. But was it traumatic for them? I mean, if you're stealing a souvenir off the ship, that sounds like more of an exciting thing than a traumatic thing.
Well, that is, we enter into subjective interpretation, and now I'm going to become devil's advocate for the Trinity story.
Okay.
Who knows? I don't know. Maybe it is something so shameful. The idea of taking something from the craft, something that is something you are not supposed to do. It's almost like you are making a very loose metaphor here. It's almost like taking a nail out of the cross of Christ.
Sure.
Maybe Diana Pasulka will be happy or proud of using that metaphor. But it's not something that you will be, bragging about. Like maybe it's something that you will keep deep into a secret.
Perhaps.
I don't know. Like I said, I'm speculating here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's all we can really do there.
Yes.
This guy has done, whose name I am not remembering for whatever reason, but he has done, an enormous amount of research, just fact checking. And really, the thing that comes out of this to me is, again, why didn't Vallee fact check this stuff? Why did he rely on Paola?
It seems from both reading people talking about it and a little bit of what Vallee is saying that she was the one who had, she was the contact. Yeah. And if he wanted access to these guys, then he had to.
Yeah. She was the middleman. Yeah. She was the intermediary to the story, and for some reason, Reme and Jose trusted her, and I think that Reme Baca thanked her and acknowledged her when he wrote his self-published book, Born in the Age of Ground Zero. So I don't know, for some reason they both trusted Paola and maybe say, hey, you want to talk to us? You gotta go through Paola. I don't know. Mm-hmm. Or maybe she got herself embedded into the story for other reasons. I don't know. It's so difficult to
well, I mean, and it doesn't imply any kind of dishonesty on really either Jacques or Paola. I mean, it might just be a little bit of sloppiness. I mean, look at Peter Robbins with left at East Gate. He fact checked Larry.
Right.
Peter is a genuine, honest person, and he fact checked Larry. And at a certain point, he admits he got sloppy about fact checking Larry, and that's when Larry took advantage of it.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and why were they rushing this book? Was it because of the congressional stuff?
I think so. I think maybe that is the rationale.
Yeah.
That they wanted to.
Yeah. I was going to say, I think that, Vallee definitely has an agenda. I don't think that it's spreading disinformation about this.
No, I don't think so either.
I think if anything, that was, sloppiness, on his part. Yeah. I mean,
but sloppiness could also be because it was rushed. That's why I was asking.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
You only have so much time to look this stuff up. I mean, the book's been out, however long. This guy said he worked on this for 6 months or 3 months or something like that. Let's go back to the top of the story here. Because he said as of May 1st, I think it was either 6 or 3.
No, also it has to be said that he is not working alone. He's acknowledged the support and collaboration of other people like Kurt Collins and Isaac Coy. And, Isaac Coy is someone people who knows a little bit about UFOs will know about. He's a researcher. I think that he's in the UK. So that is the people who are probably also helping Douglas out. In trying to collate information. In order to build this expose.
And I will say, he said, and he points out here that, as I've written elsewhere, I believe that anomalous devices under apparent intelligent control operating in the air and sometimes seen on the ground have been reported by many credible observers since at least late World War II. I believe that some of these UFOs are likely of non-prosaic unknown origin, unknown to me anyway. I entertain the possibility that some component of the U.S. government may have recovered an anomalous device or portions thereof on one or more occasions over the past 70 years. Few things could delight me more than to see such a claim proved true, and the details laid out for public and scientific examination before I pass from this mortal sphere. But this is not that story.
That's another thing, because this type of exposés is nothing new. Some of the most recent examples were the attempts to try to debunk Travis Walton's story.
Yep, that's right.
By I don't know if people remember when someone by the nickname of Charlie Weiser published a website trying to debunk that case, and also, there was that website also had a lot of information. It was very lengthy. It was extremely snarky. But in my own personal assessment, this is different. Not only because Douglas seems to be someone who believes. I hate to use the term belief when it comes to you, but someone who thinks the UFO phenomenon is not only, hoaxes and misidentifications.
Right.
He thinks that there's something to the phenomenon. Unlike your typical debunker, your typical snarky, know-it-all people, like saying, these are all liars and these are all fools who believe, the aliens are coming to planet Earth. This expose that we're talking about this tonight is different from those examples.
Yes.
In my own humble opinion. In the Travis Walton case, for example, the scenario that it was proposed felt to me far more improbable,
right,
than the actual abduction scenario.
Yeah,
same when someone tried to. I guess the same people, Charlie Weiser and the people who collaborate with them, tried to debunk the Ariel case by saying that, their kids were bamboozled by a caravan of puppeteers in a van.
Right.
Yeah, that was
like
not that.
And it's like, what are you doing? Like, this is like the case of, the dog bites man bites dog. It's totally ludicrous. This, in Douglas Dean Johnson's defense, I feel it's not the same. He's just raising questions about believability, about
data,
checking the data, and it also has to be said, that maybe this is something that Douglas doesn't take into consideration. And maybe we will here, that the UFO phenomenon is so strange that sometimes it likes to take root. It roosts where, in that murky waters, where hoax and high strangeness intermingle. Yeah, right. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure.
That is the place where you find the phenomenon. Where you find people that have lied in the past, have made hoaxes in the past, have problems with the law. And that's all the people who actually get the
marginality, people in the margins.
The people in the margins who actually get intertwined with real phenomenon.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
Obviously, when that happens, the standard debunkers and hoaxers as well, this guy lied about his credentials, and he lied about his bank accounts. Therefore, he's not a reliable witness. And that's always what happens,
but it's not untrue.
In majority. Yeah.
That's the problem, So the article actually opens with a quote from Vallee that says, "So we have a very unusual situation there where we have the best possible witnesses." And that is just like, I don't know, maybe it's just promo book mode, but
maybe. I don't know.
They are clearly not the best possible witnesses. This is something that happened when they were children, that there's no documentation for, and they have sketchy backgrounds. So, like now the Ariel School, that was a good case. I mean, because they were right there when it happened. The kids had just experienced it and seemed to be giving honest tellings of what they experienced.
Yeah, those witnesses were children when they were witnesses, and when they were interviewed by researchers. This is not the same when they were say, these children saw this thing. No, these are grown men who saw allegedly something when they were children.
And let's face it, we can all be had. You know,
nobody's perfect. Yes.
Yeah, nobody is perfect. Any of us could be taken by something, and you know, maybe with Vallee, his trusted friend saying this was legit was enough to get him to you know, lean toward believing it. The other thing is, like, he was going to release a book himself that was supposed to be a big breakthrough book, and then this came out instead. And has it ever been cleared up?
The idea that he was looking into this, and then he realized that Paola Harris had the only connection to these guys, and he was forced to rename the book. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Well, anyway, people can just, go read the evidence for yourself. Make up your own mind.
Yeah, totally.
Read the book, read both editions if you want. Listen to both Jacques and Paola.
Yep.
And there are, numerous podcast interviews, not only after the book was released, but also before the book was released. And you can find links to that actually in Douglas Dean Johnson's exposés. He actually provides links to that, which I think is really interesting. If you want to listen to Reme and Jose when we were being interviewed by, Ernst and also by Mel Fabregas back in 2010 and something like that. So you can see like the origins, like the origin story of this book that we're discussing, and we're not saying, oh yes, Douglas Dean Johnson is right and this book is false. We're just saying that
he raises very good points that need to be answered. Correct?
We're saying that the UFO phenomenon will not be solved just by people writing books and other people writing refutals and other people, writing rebuttals of rebuttals.
Yeah.
If we keep doing this, oh my God, we're gonna keep doing this forever, man.
But you can find his work at douglasjohnson.ghost.io.
Yeah, you can also follow him on Twitter. I do.
Okay.
And it is a valuable source of information, especially when it comes to analysis of the current goings-ons of legislation and its involvement with the UFO topic. It's something that was spurred by the 2017 article in the New York Times and all the things, to the stars and all that stuff that we have talked and analyzed and criticized, for better or for worse, has had some type of impact in government legislation, at least in the United States. I don't know elsewhere.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that seems like a good place to end it. And as I said, people can make their own decisions. Take a look at this stuff. There's enough. However you want to go into it, there's information on both sides, and none of us know for sure. And we still love Vallee.
Oh my God! Yes.
Yeah, of course.
Red Pill, where can people find you?
You can find me at trying to find pieces of this wreckage at actually not. They can find me at the Daily Grail, www.dailygrail.com. They can find me at my own personal website, absurdbydesign.com. Also, I have to say that now that we finally managed to print all these decks of the Ufology Tarot project and the books, we have a few extra cards and a few extra books. So if you want to get a hold of the copy, you could actually email us at ufologytarot@gmail.com and inquiry if there are any copies available.
Okay, awesome. And Chris, where can people find you?
You can go to brightrectangle.com or find my films on Amazon or Troma Now.
All right, awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to take a moment here to thank all of my Patreons who help make this show possible, because without you, this show would be much, much less than what it is. And I want to give a special shout out to all of those pledging $10 or more Illuminati, Greg Ross, Chuck Shutters, Leanne Cherry, Matt in Delaware, Allison Cook, Super Inframan, Bart Ooms, 36 Dingo, Matthew Sproul, Andrew Nichols, Christine, a blue second-gen MR2 drifting around a Japanese mountain, Patricia Giaquinta, Alex Whitcomb, American Rambler, Andrew Maines, Ann Witowski, Barbara Fisher, Beverly Williamson, Big Boy Limina, Charles Davis, Charles in Florida, Land of the Crazy and Communicable, Chris, CJ, Craig Cicernos, Craig Parmenter, Diane B., MTK, Eric Todd, History and Coffee, J. Otto Bullitt, James Lattimore, James Lindsay, Jim and Sophie, John Bracken, Carla Mahoney, Kevin Schreck, Cool Kitty, Kristen L., Laser Printer Jam, Lauren McLean, Linda, Linz Jackson K., Luke Osborne, MJ Armstrong, Mark Brady, Mr. Weird, Oli Andre Olar, Patricia W., Paul Jeffries, Philosopher of Mirrors, Ray Benedetto, Riker and Stark, Ron Dupre, Russ Rouse, Sam Sharon, Seed Person 1, Stacy Sherwood, Tactical Therapist, Taylor Bell, Thunderboy, Tyler Glimstead, Varosh K, Vincent Trewell, Walker, Will Gebhard, Will Powell, Ren Collier, Annabelle Smith, Caroline Walker, TDT Skunkworks, and Craig Sagastumi. Thank you all so much for your support. There is a Patreon segment for this conversation, so I hope you enjoyed it. We do not talk about the Trinity book, I don't think, much in the Patreon segment. It's a completely different conversation with Chris and Red Pill. I'm also going to have some video stuff that will be getting put up soon, if it's not up already, and probably some extra stuff for Patreons as well. If you want to become a Patreon, it helps us out immensely. It's what keeps this show going. And it's only $3 a month. WhereDidTheRoadGo.com, just click on the Patreon link, and it'll take you right there. And you'll have access to everything that's ever been put on Patreon as well. And I will see you next time. You have been listening to Where Did the Road Go? This show is made possible in part from our Patreons, and we thank you and everyone listening for helping us continue this exploration of the strange. You can always find everything Where Did the Road Go related at www.wheredidtheroadgo.com. And thank you so much for your support.